Okay, so I wanted to talk to everybody just briefly how you can add detail to your reliquary assignment. Now, again, however you approach this is up to you, bless you. As far as you could take this as actual reliquary, you could take this as more of like some kind of a sci-fi container, specimen container, anything in between. But the main thing I wanted to show you is, and one of the main things I wanted to focus on is that this is very detail oriented. I want you to add features, details. However that ends up being, great. Now, one of the things is going to be certainly, like with this example here, appearances. I want you to experiment with the appearances as well, but like these hoses, this perforated mesh and all that, that is only in the appearance. As I shift to auto color mode, you can see that is not a texture, that is only an appearance, meaning that that will not translate to 3D printing it. You will have to choose separate materials, or you could even choose a baseline and print and paint them, whatever. But appearances are for the model and for the renderings. Physical textures is for the printing, which is why I want you to look at features, details. So with that in mind, I wanted to show you how I made some of the features on this. Now, I made this tube much too long, but it's about the right size. But one of the main things with this is in making features that are on in the round, emboss is going to be your friend. So how do I go about stuff like this? Well, let me start a new component. That way I can at least isolate these. Test relic. So I'll hide all of those originals, my tube, and all that. So what I also meant is keep your parts separate. Keep things separate on components. Right now, I started a new component for the entire different thing. I have that component active. I'm going to start a new component right out. That's going to be my tube. So I have a subcomponent built into that. Good. Now you can start with just a cylinder if you want. That's fine. Like I said, the available sizes, we'll go with something in between. Available size, 50 millimeter, which is about a 2-inch wide tubing. Max size, we'll go to the max at 100, which is about a 4-inch tube. It's going to be a tube, so let's use a shell tool immediately. And I don't have the thickness dimensioned right now, so let's just say, oh, it's going to be a 1 millimeter thick tubing. Cool. If I throw an appearance on there, you'll see the point. Well, I already have some saved, like glass. Okay. So that's going to be my starting point. That's going to be my baseline. Okay. The reason I started with it as a component, I can isolate that. Go back up, activate the whole project, or at least this whole component. Now let's start another one. That way I have some isolation. And this one will be, I don't know, emboss details, if I can spell, because I want to be able to show that. Again, I can isolate these. That way, one, this will break up just for organization, but this will also break up very easily for 3D printing. So cool. I've got this cylinder. Great. But what can also really help is leave that tube as an example piece. And I'm going to start a new component, or sorry, a new tube. What was that? 50 millimeters. Yep. By 100. That's going to be my placeholder so I can hide the original. And the reason for this is where I'm going to build features. Don't know why the origin is hiding on that, but there we are. Throw a construction plane out front, and let's start a sketch on that. All right. Use project, always helpful. To project my object, now I have an outline. Oops, I didn't project the object. I projected the features. There we go. Now, when I hide those bodies, now I have that element in there. Great. So from that, I'm just going to kind of create some starting points. Things like I started before. Oh, let's start a circle. And this point, right in the center, sure. 10 millimeter works for me. All right. And I'll use an offset just that way it helps me build stuff out. I don't know, one. Let's make it two. Okay, cool. Now I have this outline to work with. From that, I'm going to start using pattern tools. Pattern tools is what's going to be the most helpful in all of this. Sure, let's use three. I'll move them out and I'll move it to where they're just overlapping or so. Fine. Okay. All right. There we go. Now I have what's going to begin as a feature. Unhide bodies. I should have made this taller, so I'll use press pull and just extend that tube down a little bit. Just because I need to have a little bit of an extension so it overlaps. Good. I'll use the emboss tool to now, I got to select all of these little features in between. Or if you go from the side, you can just use the selection box, select all the things. That works a lot better. Got to make sure you select all of them at once. There we go. Okay. I don't want the insides, so I'll deselect those parts of the circles. All right. And my faces, that. And now I instantly have some feature started. Let's shrink that back down like 2. Sure, there we go. Okay. And now I have what's going to be the start of a pattern. From there, I can now switch to a circle pattern, select by features, that whole thing I just embossed, rotate it around an axis. In this case, why is it hiding my origin? Want the Z-axis, having trouble selecting it, so temporarily hide the bodies. Z-axis, there we go. And I'm just going to up the number of them until it overlaps. Problem is, it looks like one's slightly too many, and the next one is way too much. I don't know why it's jumping between there. There we go. 13 seems to be the right number of overlap. Okay. There we are. Now I have this much more ornate design. Okay, the problem is that is all connected. I'll just retitle that to emboss. That is all connected to that tube, but it's not my actual tube. It's the placeholder. Because like I just explained, now from here, I can use an extrude. Why do you have to use extrude? Because I need to remove that tube or this cylinder, but I can't just delete it. Now, when I drag that downward, I'll just leave a chunk of it so you can see the remnant. Now I'm just left with that surface feature as a rounded emboss isolated. Now, when I activate this whole part of the project and unhide the acrylic tube, now I have this great little shroud piece. It's very, very, very easy to start creating the ornate kind of details that would be traditionally be around some kind of a reliquary rather. I can do the same thing here as what do I need to do for it? Maybe I want to make like some kind of a cap or something. Cool. Okay. Let's take those bodies since I made that deletion there. And now I'll make some sort of a cap for that. Okay. Sketch not on the floating plane, but that origin plane. All right. And now let's just use something around there, meaning I want to create a line, not entirely to the top, but kind of inside. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to join these together. All right. I got a starting point there. Nope, 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 nope. Stop it. There we go. Another line right from the center from where I just made that drawing. And let's just draw it straight down. I don't know how far I feel like going. Sure, 25 seems reasonable. Snap to center. Great. From there, all right, let's use a fit point spline. And I'll just kind of draw some kind of a doodad upward. Okay. Reason I did that because I'm going to make a center circle up here. Makes it a little bit larger. Sure, it'll make it 10 millimeters, whatever. Now I instantly have an enclosed surface. I can certainly, if I want, play around with like constraints. Let's snap that line to that circle. Not going to let me do it because it's not nowhere close to it, so I just have to literally drag this point up and over or down. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. It's your model. Okay. Now I am going to run into a problem if I try to revolve this line here, or this. So I just need to take a little point here and just complete splitting up my line. So I just have half of a sketch. Okay, cool. Sketch, revolve, that half line right there. My axis, blue line, bam. Leave it as a new body for now because I can always join it later. There we go. Now I instantly have much higher or a more ornate cap. Cool. Okay. From there, why don't I start a construction line from below so that I can make a sketch on that. And now I can project that rounded cap. Okay. And let's make some details on that. Let's try something like a fit point spline that curves back around. Don't go too crazy with it. Okay. I'll use a offset. So this is a double line. I don't know. Let's say 1 millimeter. Sure. Now I'm going to use a circle to close both of those up because I feel like it. 2-point circle. These are the things we did right from the get-go of this semester. Just using 2-point circles as my end caps. There we go. Okay. So I've got my little line floating above. I'm going to emboss again. Actually, before I do this, let's hit save. New reliquary details. Okay. Before you make another adjustment, never hurts to save. Emboss, yep, I want that little sketch, but I want to make sure that I catch the 2 end circles, so don't forget that. All right, faces I want to emboss onto, the top. Uh-oh, won't let me do it. Probably because it goes too far over, and that curvature is too close. Yep. So, let me go back in, edit sketch. Probably the reason is just because these points here are too close. So let me move those. Oh, this time it's on object. Great. Let's just try to move that. Yep, all of these are. Oh, no, 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 no. Made a terrible, terrible decision here. That is not at all what I wanted. Looks partially neat, but oh, not what I wanted. So the problem is this goes too close to this edge over here. So it's going to make me delete some of this stuff. Now at least I can try to shrink this. I'm getting some real funky results because it's all offsets. But let's try just dragging this back a little bit. Oops, I had to grab both of those. Now let's drag both of those. What's happening here? It's dragging all the things, and I do not want. What is that giant circle? Do not know. Don't know where that came from. Oh, somehow it warped the original circle there. That's super weird. Ah. All right. Just trying to shrink this up a little bit so it gets a little bit further away from that edge there. Hey. All right. Let me close that back up. 2-point circles for the ends. Hopefully that fixes what I was trying to do here. Enclosed, enclosed. Cool. Okay. Let's try that. Let's try that again. So back to the emboss. Don't forget the little endpoints. And onto the faces. Ah, still the error. Okay, well, ultimately, I know what the problem is because it's such a curved surface, it's trying to move around that, and it's just not agreeing. I can try adjusting the depth. Let's see if that does anything at all. Might not because it's just too close. So unfortunately, you run into this sometimes. So what I might have to do is just shrink the lines a little bit. Or if you're running into this and I'm trying to get it to go from below and across, what I have found sometimes it does work better to go from the front or from the side. So let me try that instead. We'll go that way. We'll do our sketch looking straight on. Project again, that bottom. Okay. And we'll try another fit point spline, something a little bit less aggressive. Just a little curvy line. Okay. And let's just close it off with just a straight line this time. That way I can just speed along here. Okay, there we go. Close sketch, super duper. Let's try it from this side. Save. Come on. Bogging down. New emboss, sure. All right, let's try this one. That little profile onto the faces. Hey, worked this time. So, yep, sometimes it doesn't like to work the right direction, but there we go. Let's say only 1 millimeter, and I want to deboss it so it's inside. Okay, cool. So I got my little feature. Great. Let's throw on some fillet onto the edges or just onto that. Sure. Wait, one. Round it out more, all of that, but you get the idea. All right. Now, again, circle pattern. Make sure it's by features. I'm going to try and grab all the things in here. Sometimes it is a bit temperamental. You can see my screen keeps flickering. I'm trying to just grab all the features. There we go. And around my axis, again, same Z axis if I can get at it. There you go. So just throw some more features on. Maybe don't make them overlap. Come on. And there you go. So it's really quick to start adding features, aside from when you run into problems, um, so that you can get some ideas down. Now, one thing I messed up on, I made my sketches with the whole project active instead of activating that part. So it does get easy to get mixed up. If you run into that, remember that you can drag and drop stuff onto the proper component. That way, so like if I shift to auto color, at least now things stay a little better organized. And so that's an easy way to just start really quickly adding a lot of features. I'm just using emboss. I'm just using pattern tools and emboss. Rotate that around, combination of rectangle pattern to make just like a vertical stack, and then circle pattern to make a thing in the round. The trick to making an emboss in the round that is isolated, like we're going to have to do for this tube, is model it on top of essentially a sacrificial cylinder that you can then not delete, but extrude away, because I can't just delete it. The emboss is part of that surface. But if I use extrude and just shrink the cylinder down and just cut itself away, that leaves just the surface embossment, just these little surface features as its own body. And then from there, I would just say like, okay, well, I can just join those together. So that would be the cap, and then I could just join those together into a combine. Now, realistically, what I would do is also slide this into where it like sockets. What I mean by that is, let's go ahead and do that combine. Let's combine the cap and the emboss. Hit OK. Now that's leaving me with an extra one. Don't know why, don't know where. Where's the extra? Oh, I did it again. I accidentally left the whole project active instead of specifically the emboss. So I created more details. Bummer. Actually, I made a separate one because I left that. It's kept my original options where I made a new component. All right, whatever. That's fine. The reason I wanted to join those is I wanted to show you. So if I select this object, and be cautious when you go to move an object, look at how my cursor is moving around. Lately, the move tool has not been just defaulting to like a central area. It is trying to connect to all different things. If you are having trouble trying to select where to move it from, just temporarily hide other stuff at least. And now that should let me select at least right in the middle. There we go. And the reason I wanted to do that is just so I could move it up a little bit. One, so it makes contact with that tube, but goes a little bit up into it. Because what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to make sure that I have the correct project or stuff active, looks like it doesn't matter at this point, is do a combined cut. So the target body and the cut is into the cap, and my tool body is the tube. Make sure you keep tools. I don't want a new component, just keep tools. And I want to cut because now when I hide that tube, oh, looks like I didn't move it quite far enough. Move it up just a teeny bit more. There we go. Now when I hide the tube, I'm left. What is happening? It's not cutting through, or am I just, oh, yeah, it is. I just couldn't see it. It's hard to see because it's right there on the edge. Let me apply a section analysis. You can see what I'm doing here. Well, it shouldn't have cut underneath. I'm not sure why it did that, but I wanted to show you what'll happen. I can make this slightly recessed so it doesn't quite make contact. Oh, that's why. The tube, I made it with a shell instead of all the way hollow. Let me go back and fix that. What I'm doing is I'm just adjusting the original shell and see how I made it, how it shelled instead all the way around, but also left that little bottom. Should have left it as everything, but I'll fix that later. It's not going to let me fix it right there. Anyway, I was just making a little bit of a recess there so that that acrylic tube would just socket into the printed object a little bit easier. That's it. So, little extra step that I meant to, but like I said, I just wanted to show you some pretty quick ways where you can add a lot of detail very quickly to make this more ornate. So I'll save that. Extra details. And I did it again to where technically I made it upside down, but whatever. So you'll make your thing. It'll have end caps to some degree, whether or not it opens directly into that cylinder, or maybe this cylinder then goes into a larger object or something. Great. But the whole thing is you will also need to model what goes inside of your reliquary. So play around with it, come up with some ideas. We'll go from there.